We are joined once again this week by Chantal Bisson. Chantal, this time we're going to be talking about how to talk to your child about a marriage breakup. And this is something that is very difficult, but unfortunately happens a lot. So what is your advice? Does it depend on the age of the kids as to how much information you give? Where do you start with that?
Well, for sure. It definitely depends on the age of the child, as to how much you do tell them about what's going on in the relationship and the marriage. A lot of people don't know this about Yannick and I, but we had a separation at the 16-year mark of our marriage. We had a very short separation. And what we did leading up to that separation was we were working with a family therapist, and we really asked her, what's the best way to give kids really bad news? And she really helped us through and gave us a lot of pointers on how to do it and how to deal with it. But her biggest thing was include the kids in the separation of the home, because it helps them to feel like they're still a part of both parents' lives. So meaning that, if they were staying in the home that I was keeping and Yannick was moving into his own place, that they should be a part of actually setting up the home. Of the three girls, not all of them wanted to do it, and some of them one girl wanted to do this and the other one didn't. So again, it goes back to knowing your child, engaging what their comfort level is and what's going to actually ultimately sit best for them.
So what is the key to balancing time with the children following a breakup? Do you then let your kids, as you said, decide? Should that be all up to them? Or say if they, are maybe younger and don't quite realize the situation and want to be maybe 70% with mom and 30% dad, that you should make it 50-50? Or should you still, even if they're younger, allow them what they want?
Yeah. Again, this depends on the parent. This depends on the schedule, the existing schedule of a family. You have some families where the dad's on the road, 3 weeks out of a month.
Right.
So the mom is still carrying that load and that burden of having the kids there every day, day in, day out. And then, it makes sense that they would then go be with dad for the week. Other parents feel like they love the 50-50, 1 week with mom, 1 week with dad, and that the parents swap out of the houses, which I've seen a lot of my friends do that, where there's an apartment that the mom and dad go back and forth between, and the kids always stay in the family home. And then, of course, there's the old standard, which is Wednesday and every other weekend. I think what really, really is important is honoring the other parent's desire for quality time with their children, because the person, whoever leaves the house, whether it's the mom or the dad, or the mom or the mom or the dad and the dad, whichever person is leaving the house, you've got to remember that's a huge emotional shift for that person as well. Not just the children are being impacted, right? Because you've then got this parent who was living in a family home, who was with their children every day, whether or not they were hands-on, whether or not they were stay-at-home, they still were part of a family. So I think it's really important in a breakup to really respect that partner's needs. Even though you haven't worked out your relationship, it's not your job to then damage the other parent's relationship with the child by being hard-headed and being stubborn about time sharing.
All right, and how important is it, Chantal, to not talk badly about your spouse in front of the kids?
God, it's so important. It's so hard, but it's so important. I mean, it depends on what that person's done to you, right?
Right.
But again, I think it goes back to the age of the child, and also it goes back to whether or not that behavior that may or may not have ended the relationship filtered down to the kids. Like if you have an abusive person who was verbally abusive to you or physically abusive to you and also was to the children, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Everybody knows that that person's not a good person. But I think if it's something more intimate, like one person was unfaithful, your kid does not need to know about that. I mean, maybe down the road so that they can understand, because oftentimes in a breakup, a child will try to find a parent to blame, and the parent who is not to blame might get the heat, like you made daddy leave or you made mommy leave and I hate you. And the temptation on that other parent's side is to be like, oh, hold on, I'm going to tell you a thing or two. And I'm not saying we were great at that, because Yannick and I are both very emotional people, but it's super, super, super important. It's the most important thing. That's what you have girlfriends for. That's what you have a therapist for. That's what you have, parents and aunts and other people in your life. Those are the people you complain and moan about your partner to, not your children.
Okay, Chantal, thank you very much, and we'll be back next hour. Once again, if you'd like more information on this subject, you can check out Chantal's website, chantalbisson.com. Chantel Bison is back with us this hour. Chantel, we're switching over to the relationship side of things for this segment now, and we're going to be talking about how you can give your partner space without becoming insecure. Jealousy obviously is something that happens in a lot of relationships. Maybe for some, maybe for others, they don't really care, I guess. But what is the key to doing this? Does it depend on the length of the relationship, or how do you get this all figured out?
Yeah, well, I have to start this topic by first saying I envy any woman who's not a jealous freaker. I am so jealous, and I wish I wasn't. And it's funny because my husband's an actor for a living, and he makes out with women and gets paid to do so. So I don't know how I wound up like that, but yet here I am. Okay, so I think what's really important here is that everybody inside their relationship needs to acknowledge what their needs are. And that depends on everybody has been raised differently. Everybody has had different experiences. I grew up in a household where my dad was unfaithful. So for me, when a guy wanders off and you can't reach him, the alarm bells go off because that's just what I saw. And that's what I grew up. I have triggers, and we all are going to have those. And it's all dependent on what we saw and what our other relationship experiences have been. So if you've got a partner who has been cheated on a lot, chances are they're going to be a little bit more delicate, and they're going to need a little bit more confirmation from you that you're in it to stay and that you're committed. So it's really important that relationships are open and that people can feel comfortable but to be themselves, even their worst self. Even when they're feeling jealous, when they're feeling insecure, they should be able to feel comfortable enough to tell their partner that this behavior in them causes this trigger in them to go off, and ask for some shift and some change so that both parties can feel their best inside the relationship.
Now, how does you go about setting boundaries for something like this? Because obviously one way or the other, or one side or the other, can probably take things a little too far if there, is some concerns that maybe something is happening that is not supposed to. Where do you draw the line for that, as far as, getting in and starting to check phones and, even going to the extent of having somebody followed for that matter, because that has happened. So where do the boundaries come in, and how do you set those?
Well, I think it all goes back to honest dialogue, and I know I say this pretty much in every single segment, but a lot of us are afraid to speak truthfully to people, whether it's to our friends, to our children, to our partners, anybody. And the person you're really doing the greatest disservice to when you won't be honest in your communication and in your relationships is yourself, because nobody can really know if they're causing you upset if you don't tell them that they are. If you're not expressing your needs clearly, then it's impossible for a partner to meet those needs. Now, if you're worried that your partner is cheating, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. And that we could probably do an hour conversation on. But I think, again, you have to get to the point in your relationship where if you ask your partner a question and they give you an answer, that you're either choosing to trust and believe that answer is such, or you're not. And then you've got to go from there. And if you're with somebody that you can never feel good with, and you are never feeling secure or trusting of, then I'm going to be a little bit harsh here, but maybe that's not your person. Because nobody should be thinking all the time, I don't think I can trust you. That is an unhealthy relationship. And I don't know if that's coming from that person or if it's coming from the way that you are in a relationship. But at the end of the day, those should be moments, those should be rare moments where you feel that way about a partner. That shouldn't be the norm. And if it is the norm, then you've got to ask some serious questions, or maybe get a third party involved, like a therapist, to sit down and try to unravel why you believe that that's the case inside your relationship.
All right, well, thank you, Chantel. And once again, after we air these topics, you can always head over to Chantel's website. She's publishing articles on these subjects and just giving more information, and you can connect directly with her. So Instagram and Twitter is at Chantel Bisson, and her website is chantelbisson.com.